In terms of circuit design, the Jeddah circuit could not be any more different than the Bahrain International circuit, which is why today we're going to be looking at and comparing the two circuits, and based on what we saw in Bahrain, I'm going to be giving out my thoughts to see who exactly is going to have a better weekend, because as I said, these two circuits couldn't be any more different. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more F1 content. Now, let's get into the video. Let's start with the most obvious aspect of the two circuits which are different, and that is the layouts. In terms of layouts, these two circuits are completely different in just about every way possible. Let's start off with the glaring obvious, which is the walls. The walls in Jeddah are absolutely savage. There is very little margin for error in Saudi Arabia, and that means that one small slip up will see you in the wall and out of the race, or even out of qualifying. In the two races at Jeddah so far, we have seen some massive incidents with drivers making a simple mistake at the worst possible time. Max Verstappen was on track to put in one of the most legendary pole position lap times of recent memory, until he went ever so slightly wide at the last corner and hit the wall on the exit. Schumacher has had a couple of big incidents. In the first Grand Prix, he hit the wall hard, causing a red flag. And last year in qualifying, Schumacher slammed into the wall at high speed, causing so much damage that Haas opted not to race Mick the next day. And of course, the GOAT himself, Nicholas Latifi, found the wall in last year's qualifying session, and to Perez's dismay, he also found the wall in last year's Grand Prix. Now, let's compare that to Bahrain, and well, in certain sections you kind of wonder where the walls are. There is a lot of runoff at this circuit, meaning that cars don't very often find a wall. Okay, I admit, one of the biggest crashes into a wall did happen at Bahrain, but that being said, the walls in general are very hard to find at the Bahrain circuit. And now that we got that out of the way, what about the circuit layout? Well, you would imagine that because Bahrain has walls at a safe distance from the circuit, that the average speed of the circuit would be substantially higher than the Jeddah circuit, but in actual fact, it's the opposite way around. And how can we see that? Well, let's take a look at the average speed for the fastest ever lap of each circuit. Firstly, Bahrain. Bahrain is a 5.412 kilometer circuit, and the fastest ever lap time is a 127.264 by Lewis Hamilton in the 2020 rocket-powered Mercedes. That leads to an average speed of 223.267 kilometers per hour. Now, let's compare that to Jeddah. The Jeddah circuit is 6.175 kilometers in length, and the fastest ever lap is a 127.511 by, once again, Lewis Hamilton, but this time in a slightly less rocket-powered Mercedes from 2021. The Bahrain circuit is 763 meters shorter than Jeddah, but it is only 0.3 seconds faster in terms of lap time. This therefore leads to an average speed for the Saudi circuit to be 253.984 kilometers per hour. From that alone, you can see that the average speed in Jeddah is much higher than it is at Sakhir. This higher average speed, coupled with the fact that there are only a handful of heavy braking zones and a lot of flat out corners, leads to the teams running the Saudi Arabian circuit with less downforce. Downforce is not as important here because the drivers spend a lot more time at full throttle, therefore running more downforce is essentially a waste of vital lap time, because higher downforce means more drag, and more drag means a lower top speed. Not only this, but the track surface in Saudi Arabia is a lot less abrasive than it is in Bahrain. And what does this mean? Well, think of the track surface like sandpaper. In Bahrain, you have a coarse sandpaper, which is used to quickly reduce the amount of material. In terms of, well, when you're using sandpaper, you use a coarse sandpaper to get rid of material as quickly as possible. However, in Saudi Arabia, it will be a much more fine choice of sandpaper. One that you would use to get that smooth finish at the end of sanding. So what does that exactly mean? Because Bahrain is a much rougher surface, tyre wear is much higher, even though the corners are not as fast. That is why in Bahrain, it was a 2-stop, and for many, it was actually a 3-stop race. Or in Lando Norris's case, it was a 5-stop race. Saudi Arabia, with its smoother surface, massively reduces tyre wear, which is why last year, the drivers were able to easily get away with a 1-stop and that will probably be the case this year as well. This year, it is probably going to be a one-stop race, much like it was last year. So I hope this is helping to build up an image to show why things in Saudi Arabia could be completely different to Bahrain. So let's recap real quick. In Saudi, we have close walls, which means the most minor of mistakes are punished. The lap speed is significantly faster in Saudi, and the cars run less downforce in Saudi due to them being on full throttle for a much longer period of time. And also the surface on the circuit is much smoother, leading to the cars having much less tyre wear. And the final difference is the fact that there are not many heavy braking zones in Saudi. Because of this, cars are not traction limited on the rears like in Bahrain. So with all this information coupled together, the question then becomes, who does this really help? And who will this hinder when it comes to the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix for the top teams? Well, that is what we're going to try and find out, based on what we saw from Bahrain. Let's start off then with who should actually benefit from Saudi Arabia, and the first team is Ferrari. From the Bahrain Grand Prix, we could see that in terms of aerodynamic efficiency and drag levels, Ferrari was probably one of, if not the fastest cars out there. They had a higher top speed than all of their rivals, but they were running similar levels of wing. This means that trimming off the downforce a little bit and having a track with a lot more full throttle could really help the Ferrari team to perform better. In Bahrain, they would have been on the podium had Leclerc not broken down, so really with Leclerc, they are the second fastest car out there already, and when it comes to the Grand Prix, they could do one of two things. They could trim the same amount of downforce off as everyone else, or they could trim less downforce off than their rivals. Now, why would they do this? They would do this because what essentially they can do is have everyone come to their level of top speed, however they can maintain some extra level of wing, and therefore run a little bit more aero if they wanted to, which is a big advantage. One of Ferrari's biggest disadvantages in Bahrain was the fact that they were struggling with tyre wear versus Red Bull and Aston Martin, so opting to run more wing would reduce this issue, and of course with Saudi being a low tyre wear circuit, it could pretty much eliminate this issue altogether. This means that Ferrari has a couple of ways that they could attack the Saudi circuit and get a leg up on their rivals. Another team that will benefit from the Saudi Arabian circuit is, and probably sadly for some, Red Bull. Red Bull had a very efficient car as well, however, they will not benefit as much as Ferrari should do, which could give us a closer battle, at the very least, between Sergio Perez and Charles Leclerc. I'm not sure Ferrari will be able to touch Max Verstappen, but if Ferrari nail the weekend, then I do believe that we could see Leclerc take the fight in the Grand Prix to Sergio Perez, and you never know what, he could actually beat Perez on track. But how about Aston Martin? Well, based on the data and what we could see from Bahrain, I think Aston Martin could be the team that is hurt the most out of the top four with the different circuits. In Bahrain, one of Aston's biggest advantages was tyre wear and how they were able to have less degradation than the Mercedes and the Ferrari. But with Saudi being low tyre wear, then this factor is not as large as it would have been in Bahrain. Another big advantage in Aston Martin's back pocket in Bahrain was the fact that they were the best team on the brakes, which is not really advantageous on a circuit which only has, well, one or two heavy braking zones. That being said, it could be down to the fact that Aston were probably running with more wing in the Bahrain Grand Prix, which would make sense given that Aston was also one of the more draggy cars. Another car which was draggy was the Mercedes, but we kind of knew from last year that the Mercedes concept was a draggy concept, so we knew that would be the case. The question is though, which one of these two teams can remove more drag but maintain pace in Saudi? This is going to be pretty important for Mercedes and Aston Martin. Whichever team can reduce the most amount of downforce but maintain pace through the corners will probably win out between these two teams. And I have a sneaking suspicion that it might not be the Aston Martin, but I could be wrong because, as I said, who knows, Aston Martin could have been running with a bit more downforce than their rivals in Bahrain, which may have been why they were so good on the brakes. So, in short, I believe in Saudi, Red Bull will still be the fastest, but the Ferrari can challenge at least one of the two cars if they can perfect their setup, due to the Ferrari in general being a less draggy car. The fight for third best will be between Mercedes and Aston Martin and could possibly come down to who can trim the most amount of downforce off their car whilst maintaining performance through the fast corners. Personally, I do think Mercedes could have a slight edge going into Saudi Arabia versus the Aston Martin, but of course we shall find out in a couple of days when the race weekend gets underway. The question is though, what do you guys think? Down below in the comments, let me know, do you think we could see a slight shake-up in the order in terms of performance in Saudi versus Bahrain? And as always, comment, leave a like, and subscribe for more F1 content. Thank you all so much for watching.